Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on getting started with FormStack workflows. My name is Ryan Jorgensen, and I am a Customer Success Enablement Manager here at FormStack. Today, I'm also joined by our Senior Customer Success Manager, Laurie Wilkinson. Hello, hello. Now, whether you're new to FormStack or are an existing customer looking for a refresher on FormStack workflows, this is going to be a great webinar for that. Taking a look at our agenda for today, Laurie is going to be taking us through some of the use cases that she sees with her customers, as well as a live demo where we're going to be going over navigating the best practices for creating a workflow. Now, just a few housekeeping items before we get started and jump into this. This webinar is going to be recorded, and a follow-up email that contains the recording is going to be sent out over the next 24 hours. But that recording will also be on our registration page if you need to reference anything that we've gone over today. Also, we'd love to hear about what you came here to learn. So we do have a poll that we're going to be posting shortly to get an idea of what brought you to this webinar. That poll can be found on the right-hand sidebar and will be open over the next while. Now, if at any point during our webinar, you do have a question concerning the content that we're going over today, or just in general about FormStack workflows, we do also have a Q&A tab that is also located on that right-hand side, and you can put your questions in there. After our demo, we'll try our best to answer any of those questions live that you may have posted. But if for some reason we're unable to get to your question, we will also go over some great resources for you at the end to help with learning our products. If you do have a specific question, though, regarding your account, we would ask for you to connect with your account manager or your customer success manager, depending on your plan. With that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Laurie to take us through use cases and a live demo.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to steal that screen share and make sure I'm sharing my entire screen so we can go into the demo. All right. So today, we are going to first go over what you're trying to solve for, common business objectives, or as Ryan mentioned, your goals, your use cases. I will highlight some of the ones that I see most frequently. Then we'll jump into a demo of workflows. We'll just pretend to be an end user who fills out a workflow. We can see what it looks like in their email, as well as what it looks like for steps 2 and 3. And then we will recreate that demo by building one from scratch. We'll have a couple things that we highlight. So separate values, we'll go over notification emails. If you do have any questions about SSO field prefill, we will touch on that briefly. You can also drop your questions in that Q&A on the right-hand side, and we'll go over some logic. So some of the most common business objectives that I see are HR and internal. So time off, leave requests, onboarding and offboarding workflows, as well as disciplinary action. I do see external use cases quite often. So sales orders, expense requests, loan applications. And then 2 pillars that I see utilizing workflows a lot are healthcare as well as higher ed. Quite similarly to the HR, we have incident reports or patient discharges. And then over in higher ed, I do see the financial aid office using it a lot, grant proposals, ad drop, transcript requests, things of those nature. The one that I see the most often is a time off request. And so that is what we will be doing today. So that first step is going to be an employee requesting off time. They select their direct report, their manager. Their manager will get a notification and either approve or deny that request. And then if it is approved, it will go on to HR so that they can document those request approvals. So I am going to jump in to the demo. So I've gone ahead and built out a workflow already. And I've gone ahead and filled it out already. So we've got the name, the email, what they're looking for approval for. So whether that's paid time off that's unpaid, or maybe volunteer time off. How long their time off is going to be. Perhaps it's going to be routed to a different process. Maybe an additional approver is needed if that time exceeds 1 to 3 days. They will select their manager supervisor and then input their start date and end date of that time. So when they submit that form, they'll get a confirmation message. And then over in the manager's email, they'll get a notification that will be the title of the form and the form step. So this may not look as explicit, but it could be named something like manager approval time off request. And then it will say it has been assigned to you. So when they click on that, they'll have the opportunity to visit their workspace to complete the task. If they are not already logged into FormStack, they'll be prompted to log in on the login page. If they have logged in already, it will take them right into their workspace. Once here, they'll have all of their assigned tasks on the left-hand side, and the new one will be highlighted, and you can see all of the options below. Right now, they only have one approval that they'll need to approve. So it's this number 4. As they scroll down, you can see all of the information that that first person had filled out. And then they can either approve yes or no. You can include as much information as you want in this section. I've kept it short and sweet for the demo. So initial approve, we'll go ahead and select yes and submit form. If I were to select no, there would actually be a notification emailed both to the manager as well as the employee, letting them know that it has been denied. So now that that's been approved, I do have it going to HR. So I have that back here in my workspace. So now we are essentially logged in for the demo's sake as an HR representative. They'll navigate to their workspace, find that exact same workflow example. So this would be the paid time off or time off request, and then click into that example. Very similarly, they can see the information that the employee filled out as well as the manager. So I can see that they approved it. And then either if I need to approve it, or maybe just check a box saying, yes, I have input this into our HRIS system. So I'm going to go ahead and select yes and submit the form. And that is the end of the workflow. Once that is done, and I will navigate back to that form example, you will notice that the submission we just did on today's call is at the very, very top under completed workflows. And you can review all of that information as well as the workflow progress. If we were to have paused in the middle, perhaps after the manager step, you would be able to see your in progress workflows here under the in progress workflows tab. So now we're going to jump into building this exact same situation from scratch. And I will do that in this demos folder here. So when you first go in to create a workflow, you'll click on Create Form. And instead of creating a regular form, you'll be creating a workflow. You'll select Next Step. I'm going to call this a time off request. And if you would like to select a folder to save it under, you can do that from here as well. So I will go ahead and select Demos. You can start with a template. The templates range from category, education, healthcare, HR. So if you're looking for more ideas to feel inspired, you can do that. If you change your mind, you can always start with a blank workflow instead, which is what we're going to do today. What's really nice about workflows is it automatically inputs a section on your form. So I'm highlighting that in green. And this is going to be the first step of our workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that just for clarity's sake today. And then put anyone can fill this section out. So in this case, this would be the employee information or the employee request. Once I have that section input, just like any other form, I'm going to start dragging and dropping my fields. Or if you have a general idea of which order you would like to build your form out in, you can double click fields to have them appear in your form in sequential order. So I think I'm going to do a date and time. So I'll double click, name, email address. I'm going to put in a radio button, which is a single select option so that they can choose whether or not they're doing PTO, VTO, or time off. I'll also need a drop-down list, which is also another version of single select for how much time they're taking off. And then we will also have perhaps different options of VTO, PTO, or unpaid time off as a drop-down list as well. So I'll add in another for maybe a manager. And then lastly, I'll do 2 more date and time fields for their start time and end time. So I'll double click that 2 more times. So right now I have my first section more or less built out, and now I just need to start filling out the information. So this first one, I actually kind of want to be a timestamp of when they initially filled it out. So I'm going to call this today's date. I'll have it be required, and I'm also going to remove the time because I'm mostly concerned about the initial date that they set it up. I'm going to default it to today's date, and then I'm going to make it read only so they cannot adjust the date and time. For name, I think that looks perfect. I'm actually just going to make it required by selecting this asterisk here. Same with email. For this radio button, I'll click on this and then I can adjust the field names here. So instead of radio button, I'm going to rename it. I'd like approval for, and then I'll change my options for PTO, paid time off, volunteer time off, or time off unpaid. This drop down will be length of time off, and we'll give it 1 to 3 days. So again, maybe you have differing situations and you'll use this field to put logic on perhaps the order of your workflow. If you have the same process for everything, it could be that you don't need a field like this and you just simply use the start date time, which I'll fill out here. So start date and the end date. So it's completely up to your processes, what you want. But if you do have differing processes that are based off of certain conditions, like the length of time off, 1 to 3 days or 4 to 7 days, maybe it doesn't need to go to an additional manager. If it's a week or 2 weeks longer, maybe it does have an additional step. So I'll leave that in there for now. 4 to 7 days. Or 1 week plus. This next drop down, we will make the manager drop down. So with manager drop down, this is going to be a field that we have on our form to help direct who's going to fill out that next step. And of course, everyone has different managers for the most part. And so what you'll need to do here is this is basically the dynamic part of your workflow. We have a feature here at FormStack called a smart list, which I think is really helpful. And it's what I'm going to use today, or at least I'll copy one. Smart lists are great because you only have to update them from one spot. These can be found under your name and then smart list, which is 4th from the bottom. When you link your smart list, which is this option down here, when you link your smart list in a form, you can see which forms are being utilized in that smart list feature. And say you're using that same smart list in 5 different forms. maybe a new manager comes or a different manager leaves your company or organization, you can update it in that one spot and it will update those 5 forms with your new list if it is linked. So Smart List is a really great feature, especially if you're having the same list, especially if it's a long list of names, to basically change it in one place and have it be affected on multiple forms. Today, I just copied it. If you don't want to utilize Smart Lists, that's no problem. When you do add in all of the different names, you'll have an option down here called Advanced Options Editor. Over on the right-hand side, you'll have the capability to use separate values. So what this does is it allows your end user to only see the label, so their manager name, and then the value, which is the email, is going to help direct where that workflow is going to go. All of the people in your Step 2+ will need to be participant users. So if you have not added these people into your FormStack account as a participant user, you will need to do so before having your form go live. So I've gone ahead and have my labels, my values for the email addresses, and I'm going to save those options and rename this field. As you can see, it still says drop down as my manager list or manager email. I'll go with name. All right. The next drop down list, if you do have length of time off, maybe you have different varying lengths of time off if they select PTO, VTO, or time off. So I'm actually going to delete this field. For this length of time off, maybe 1 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, and 1 week plus are only really valid for PTO or VTO. So length of time off unpaid. You can always make copies if you're going to have something similar. So if length of time off unpaid and length of time off PTO are the same, you can just make a copy of that field and it'll save you a lot of time. And then additionally, maybe you have something slightly different for volunteer time off. Maybe you only quantify that in hours instead of days. So you can make a copy and then adjust the options below. So I'll do VTO, maybe 1 to 3 hours, 4 to 7 hours, and 1 day plus. Perfect. So this is my first section. Before I move on to my additional sections, which will be the other sections that my participants in my workflow will be filling out, I probably don't want to show all of these options. I definitely want to put a little bit of logic on here to make sure that my form is concise. So I'm going to select whichever field I want to apply that logic to. So length of time off. Let me just give this a quick refresh. All right, so length of time off is what I'm going to put logic on first. So I've clicked on the field, you'll see it highlights in green, and then I'm going to click logic at the top here and add rule. I'm going to show this field when all of my rules match, and I'm going to show this when I'd like approval for is equal to unpaid time off. I'm going to repeat that process for each of my other fields so that it is only showing when it makes sense to. So if I'd like approval for is PTO, then my PTO option is going to show. And lastly, the same situation for VTO. This same application can be applied to so many different ways in your form. This could be applied to in a time off form to the specific type of time off. So if that's parental leave, maybe you need additional information. Maybe they need to upload a birth certificate. If it is for a different type of workflow, there's so many different things that you could ask for. Additional witnesses on an incident form or additional paperwork. And all of this can be dynamic. Logic can be placed on fields, but it can also be placed on additional sections. So again, with an incident form, maybe you have to fill out basically the same section, but it's going to be someone else's name with all of their details. Maybe HR needs to investigate each person involved in that incident. So you can always highlight a section, you can copy a section, and then you can select that new section. I'll go ahead and do that. So you can select the section header and fields, and it'll create a copy. And then you can select that entire section and place logic on it. So it'll be the same behavior as applying logic to your fields as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And we're going to add in 2 more sections, a little bit shorter. The next section is going to be the manager, and the final one will be HR. At the very bottom on the left-hand side, you'll have your sections. You can drag and drop those over. You'll click on your section as a whole to rename it. So this will be step 2, and it's the manager approval. Another tip or trick that I really love about FormStack is if I have the same type of question all the time, I can spend a lot of time basically recreating that field. So for example, with a radio button, I have a lot of yes, no questions. So far I've dragged and dropped a radio button onto my form. I'm going to come in and change the options to yes, no, and then erase this third option. And now I have my yes, no question set. There's a much quicker way to do this. You can actually save the field once you have it set up and give it a name like yes, no field. Once you do that, your saved fields will end up down here under saved fields. This is the same action you would take for any pre-fill that you are utilizing. So if you do set up pre-fill, you'll have pre-fill fields saved for easy drag and drop. So let me scroll down. And there we go. So I've already got my yes, no field, and I don't have to go in and drag my radio button, adjust it every single time. Do you approve of the time off above? Yes, no. Something else that you can do, pretty simple, is provide a short answer to provide a little context to the employee if their time off does end up getting declined. So you can just put in context or explanation, and then again, place logic on that context to say, show this field if do you approve this time off is no. And then we're going to have a very similar situation with step 3, which is going to be our HR. So instead of creating a new section, I'm actually going to duplicate this section. And step 3, I'm going to adjust the name. Step 3, HR. And then I'm going to, instead of do you approve the time off above, I will change that question to say, did you input the time off into the HRIS system? I actually probably wouldn't want them to submit this workflow form unless the answer was yes. So I will just have it be a yes and remove that logic question. Okay, so here are my 3 sections. And my form is set up in that aspect. Before I go further, I might want to add in some notification emails. Notification emails can help manage your end users' expectations. So under settings, we can go into emails and actions. Emails and actions are basically notification emails to not only your participants on steps 2 and 3, but you can also utilize it to your first participant. So there is a default notification email, so you can either close out of that one, deleting it, or you can edit it to fit your needs. I'm going to add in a new notification email. And for the sake of time, this is going to be time off request denied. I'm going to create a custom message. The email, I am going to drag and drop the email from the form field into this bar. And then I'm going to provide a personal message. So, hi, person first name. My drag and drop skills are not great. Hi, person first name. Your request has been denied. Please reach out to your manager at, and then their manager email will come through. And then you can say, thank you, HR. You can save that notification email. It's personalized. It's going to go dynamically to the end user. But at this point, this is always going to fire off, which doesn't quite fit our needs. So what you'll want to do is edit. I'm going to edit this simply to change the name. So I'm going to call this request denied email so that our naming conventions are a little bit more clear. Once that's saved, you'll see it request denied email. I'm going to put some logic on it. And so I'll add field logic that I'd like. Do you approve of the time off above is no. And so you can save that. So when those conditions are met and submitted, this request denied email will fire off. You may have noticed you can do it off of a field, but you can also do it off of a step logic rule. So if the entry step is assigned, completed, marked as complete, typically you can do that on other steps as well. So the notification email is a great place to really customize your entire journey. So I highly recommend looking into that a little bit further. Before we move on to the workflow aspect and setting that up, I will just highlight under security, if you are using SSO, this is where you will enable that. So please keep that in mind. I'm going to navigate back into my build tab and head over to workflow. Style, before we go into workflow, is just how you edit the look and feel of your form. We do have some out of the box themes that you can use, or you can create your own. So on the workflow steps, the entry step will always automatically be there. Anybody can fill this step out. So you'll notice that there is no assigned participant. That is completely normal. You can give your entry step a name, so anyone can fill this out, or employee. All right. Then what you'll want to do is supply some sections that they can view and edit. So I only gave them one section that makes sense for them to fill out, so I will select that. And I want to make sure they have edit access, meaning they can fill out the form. There's not much else to do here at this point, so I'm going to add in another step. The next step is our manager step. The login will always be required, step 2+. And then the last part on this settings tab is who is the participant filling out this step? Well, the manager, like I mentioned earlier, it's always going to be dynamic. So we're going to assign it from a field on your form. And then this is going to come from the manager name. Because we use those separate values, it's going to be able to pull that email address from the value to dynamically send this to the manager. Very similarly on the sections, we'll want to apply not only the manager approval, where they'll have edit access, but we also want to give them access to see or view that first step so that they know what they're approving or denying. Then you can put some logic on this step to basically tell it how to go. Basically, if the manager says, no, this is not approved, I don't really need to send it to HR. The reason that you can't add it yet is because you haven't input your HR step. So right now the system thinks, well, that workflow is going to end no matter what. So there's no reason for there to be logic. The way to get around this is it's really great to add in all of your steps and then go back and apply the logic based off of your needs for the workflow. So I'm going to add in that last step, which is the HR step. This person is going to be the same person all the time in this use case. So I'm actually going to keep it as a FORMSTACK user. As I mentioned earlier, they do need to be added to your FORMSTACK account. So I will select my HR user. I'm going to supply all of the sections because they will need to see what not only the employee put, but also the verdict of the manager, and then their step as well. So I'll give view access to those first 2 steps. So that is the end of my workflow. And as I mentioned, I wanted to go back and put some logic on step 2. And you can see that it has basically become a hot button. I can click on it now. So the logic is going to be, if did you approve the above time off is yes, then we're going to go to step 3 so that HR can input it into the system. And if did you approve the time off is no, then we're going to complete the workflow. Okay. Once you have set everything up, everything makes sense to you for your workflow, your business objective, then you'll save your settings and publish your workflow. Once that is published, you can go view the live form and begin to fill it out. And I just want to touch on publishing and unpublishing your form. I'm going to go ahead and input some information here so that we have an in-progress workflow. Only to point out what it looks like if you maybe see a spelling mistake, there's something that you want to adjust, a new manager, and you chose not to use SmartList, whatever it is. Let's see here. It could be that you are in the middle of a workflow submission and you need to adjust something. Well, you can't if your workflow has been published. So at one point or another, you may need to unpublish your workflow. So you click Make Edits, and this is what will pop up. It will tell you that you have something in progress. So someone has begun to fill out your workflow. You do have the option to mark as complete, especially if you're making vital changes to your form that whatever they've begun to fill out, they're going to need to redo it anyway. Then go ahead and mark it as complete. But if it's just a small adjustment, you can leave it as is, unpublish and edit, make your changes. If someone tries to fill out a step while this happens, they will get a notification that it cannot be completed because the workflow is unpublished. It will tell you to please contact the owner of the form, so whoever created the form. And then as soon as this is republished, which you can go to Workflow, Unpublish Workflow, your end users will then again be able to continue on filling out the next step of the workflow. All right, that is the entire demonstration. I think Ryan might be coming back on. I hope that if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. And thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again, Lori, for that demo. It's great. I think we do have a question. I'm just going to put some text there on the right in the Q&A section, just in case you don't see it. Give me just a second here to look over. Okay, so we have our first question, and it's from Sean. So we're just going to put it on the screen here. So Sean's question is, when talking about participant users, can you have someone set as a participant user so they can be included in the workflow without them having, say, access to the forms themselves, especially in a situation where you may only have one available seat?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sean. So the way that participant users work is you'll have an allotted amount of participant users that you can utilize for the calendar month. And that access can be checked at any point in app underneath your name, excuse me, underneath your name. And I believe under account usage, you can see your participant users. So what this means, if you have an allotment of 50 a month, you can actually add an unlimited amount to your user management aspect, but you can only have 50 of those people. If your max allotment is 50 per month, you can only have 50 of them actually participate in a workflow in a month. So you can add 100 and only have 50 participate. So that happens quite a lot as well. Let me know if that made sense. I know participant users can be quite confusing. So if you need some further context around that.
Yeah, feel free to post it on the Q&A, Sean, if you did need some follow-up, but I'll mark it as answered for now. And just give it another minute, see if anyone else has any questions. All right. So I'll give it one more look here. Okay. So if no one else has any other questions, you can always follow up with us after, but we also have some great resources that we wanted to share here. We do have our help center, but we also have our certification program that's currently free. It is a great tool for learning more, not just about FormStack workflows, but if you are also interested in exploring some of our other product offerings like FormStack Documents or FormStack Sign. If you like to check out either of them, we do have links to both of these pages located on the right-hand side under the Docs section. Each one is labeled correctly. And just as a reminder, I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the webinar, but this webinar is going to be recorded and sent out within 24 hours, just in case you ever need to reference any of the information that we covered today. Additionally, you can always check back on that registration page where the recording will also live and can be shared out. I'll just check back on Q&A one more time. Okay, looks like we're good. So thank you all so much for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.